Hello.
Hello.
Greetings.
I'm Abby.
I'm still not sure how we start these. This is still...
Well, you gotta have a little shtick thing, you know?
Yeah.
Broadcasting to you live from the ham radio set on the throne made of Miller Lite here in Indiana. This is Crack Ops.
So, JD,
Yeah, what's up?
Jack,
That's him.
what do you think of when you hear long leash?
BDSM.
Okay, cool. I was gonna say walking like a big dog that likes to run around.
Oh, like Clifford. Clifford the big red dog.
Not quite that.
Clifford the big red BDSM dog.
Well, no, that's a little bit weird, but that's
brought it up.
that's over my... Yes, I did. I
You
did.
did this to us. Welcome to Crack Ops, people.
JD is already in podcast jail.
Well, I think that I perpetually exist in there. I have
This
my
guy-
own little demi-plane
You're
of
on day release.
podcastum.
JD got the Epstein conviction thing where you get to leave to do work and then you have
Oh,
to go
don't,
back.
please, do not associate me with that. How dare you? That's just wrong.
Now, have any of you ever been to MoMA?
I would like a... What does that mean?
Yeah, you're gonna have to explain.
MoMA is the Museum of Modern Art. It's in New York City.
No. Well, for one thing, I've only been in New York City once.
Really?
Yeah. It was
You?
hilarious. It was the same day as the first drag convention.
You know, the only thing I remember from the one time I went to New York is I got this really, really great like kebab from a truck.
Okay. Yeah,
That's-
they do have good kebab trucks. So, Brad, have you ever been to MoMA?
No, I've only ever been to Broadway.
So, have any of you ever been to a modern art exhibition?
No.
I
avoid
maybe?
that stuff.
I think so. You're not.
You went to the Baltimore
Yeah,
Modern
yeah.
Art
I went
Museum.
to that.
I
one
just
with you.
don't. I just don't like it.
She and my mom have dragged me to
You had to do it for a project. I wasn't even there.
I mean, I think I get the point of modern art. You know, anything can be art, but I'm not a big fan of it.
So you've
Yeah.
seen Jackson Pollock.
Yeah, the splatter paintings.
I
Spider
assume
Boy.
that. Let's assume that I probably have, and just don't know that by name.
You probably have.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at
Because I kept
recognizing
writing his name in my notes as Jackson Polak, which is not his name.
art. But keeping in the theme of this podcast.
Keeping in the yeah, good times.
Going.
So I always hear kind of conservative figures talking about how modern art is liberal bullshit and it's not real art, which is hilarious when you think of the origins of mid-century modern art in America. Because it turns out MoMA is full of feds. Maybe not now, but at least in the 50s and 40s, it was brimming with feds.
So like that's around when the whole movement of modern art was getting started, right?
Yeah, what we know as modern art, it's called abstract expressionism.
Okay. I
And
actually am familiar with that. Okay.
yeah, so if you've ever
still not.
seen...
I've made some of those.
Whenever I try to draw anything, it's pretty abstract. I'm not a very artistic guy. The doctor says I'm artistic, but I'm really not.
No.
Oof.
So, abstract art and modern art had a meteoric rise in America in the 1950s, despite most of the country hating it. In fact, President Truman said, "If that's art, I'm a Hottentot."
Which is a racial slur.
It's a not very nice Dutch
very-
word
yeah.
for Africans.
Well, we might actually have to figure out if we need to like bleep that or something. I don't know if that's something that we do. Probably not.
Probably, yeah, I don't know.
It's Dutch racism, so it doesn't
Yeah,
count.
I don't know what
yeah.
the Dutch
It's
do.
not a good thing to say.
Just don't call anyone a Hottentot. Don't
Also,
be...
yeah, just weird sidebar. Why this stuff is huge, but everyone hates it. All I know are a bunch of Philistines who hate modern art, and I also kind of don't like it very much.
Well, like that's the thing though, is that like abstract expressionism. When
It's
I've
a
seen,
subset of
when I've
modern
seen
art.
it as that, like I do enjoy actually like abstract sculpture. I'm a huge fan of. It's great because it's like someone did something really cool looking, and you're just like, what is that? I don't know. Let's talk about it. But then there's a lot of the other kinds of modern art, which is like, oh, what's a good example? Like performance art pieces where someone like locks themselves in a cage for a month.
Yeah, it's just lame. They're
It's
trying
like it's
really
like
hard.
okay, well, good for you. That doesn't sound like fun. I don't. The only questions that makes me ask are like, why are you doing this,
Yeah,
and who's funding this?
Are you okay?
Yeah.
So MoMA was founded in the 20s, I believe, by Abigail Aldrich Rockefeller.
Ooh.
And her son, Nelson Rockefeller, referred to it as Mummy's Museum.
Wait, is that Nelson Rockefeller, the vice president?
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Not of America.
Wait, what? I thought
No, well, he ran several times.
there was a I have
There's not been a
a Nelson
Rockefeller.
Rockefeller vice presidential ashtray somewhere.
Nixon Rockefeller. Was that one of the tickets?
I think it was.
I had never heard of it.
I
felt like
I
heard
have
of
an
this.
official seal of the vice president ashtray from my grandfather that says Nelson Rockefeller on it.
Because I know he was like the governor of New York for a minute.
Nelson Rockefeller, former Vice President of the United States.
Oh, seriously?
From 1974 to 1977.
How did I not figure that out?
Okay.
Okay.
Would that be?
And he was the 49th governor of New York from 1959 to 1937.
And someone who did not
73.
like MoMA.
in spite of
apparently.
like owning it.
Yeah.
Well, okay, you referred to it as Mummy's Museum. So,
Mimi has given me
Yeah.
a museum. I do not like it. I'm
So-
going to sell it to buy more snacks.
Yeah,
so you're
what's the
probably
catch here?
wondering how the CIA and MoMA are related to each other. Because usually when
could
I
be.
see MoMA, it's on the bag of hipster girls.
Yeah.
So, MoMA was founded in the 20s by Rockefeller's mummy, Abigail Aldrich Rockefeller. So Nelson Rockefeller was a fan was a fan of abstract expressionism, which he referred to as free enterprise painting.
Gross.
What a weirdo.
Oh, I like art. I hate
push
people
through.
talking about
It's
it.
Let's not dwell on this. This is awful.
Yeah, I think I lost like a month of my lifespan just from that sentence.
Yeah, I feel a little bit like closer to death.
I just feel very dry and.
Okay, wait, but what does this have to do with the CIA?
I'm glad you asked, JD. So, what do you know about the Soviet Union in the 40s and early 50s?
We didn't like them. They were building the bomb.
Who was in power?
Oh, Stalin.
Stalin until
Now,
1953.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, did
Died in,
Stalin
March.
like free expression in art?
I have no idea.
I think. Let's just say the Soviets were not big fans of
Okay,
free
but this
expression.
isn't just the Soviets.
Maybe like
this
the early
This is
Soviets.
Stalinist Soviet Union.
Probably not.
The 50s. This is the most repressive era.
Probably not. I mean, they probably liked bread lines a lot more than anything else
Yeah.
because a lot of people were dying of starvation.
Yeah. The post-war was not great.
Yeah, it was
So
not a
in
good.
post-war USSR, the only state-sanctioned art form is socialist realism,
Which
Okay.
which
it slaps. It looks really cool, but all the paintings look the same. It's
yeah, it's
incredibly
like one of those
boring.
things
It's
where I
lame.
can look at one and
What is-
appreciate it. But if I would not go to a whole gallery of socialist
No,
realism.
they made 3 paintings and they did those 3 paintings
That-
10,000 times.
That description sounds like someone from the 50s, a capitalist from the 50s, trying to explain like communist art. Like, oh, they did one good thing, and the rest of it is just it's all the same. They produced
But
it a
it
billion
is.
times.
If you look at socialist realism, it's just idyllic paintings of modern Soviet life in that era. And it's not bad. It's not bad. It's just not
it's
terribly
it's very
creative.
technical. Like technically, it's very good painting. You know, they convey the emotion. It looks very Renaissance.
I love that we're talking about visual art
It's
on
like-
an audio format.
Shit. Yeah. Why didn't we think of this?
But all that matters with the socialist realism is just that it's very kind of bland.
Okay.
It's just not super creative, not super abstract. So the idea was
No tilting
that
and squinting.
There's no Dutch angles. It's all just like sexy factory workers. That's essentially the entire genre.
oh yeah, just ripped men hard
That
at
does
work.
sound
yeah,
interesting.
pretty
though.
much. It's
Anyway.
Refreshing. So the U.S. was not only in an economic war with the Soviet Union, there was also sort of a cultural front to it. The idea of not only who can go to space, who can produce more, but who can have a bigger cultural output and a bigger cultural impact on the world.
So who has the biggest artsy dick?
Who has the biggest art dick?
we're
But
back
also
to the-
music
back to the
dick,
theme.
Yeah, but like I would consider art, I mean, like music as art.
theater dick,
Yeah, but that's also art.
They actually
Big capital A art dick.
art dick.
Yeah.
the movies actually they were better at movies. Gotta say,
They had good movies.
terrible paintings, great movies.
So the idea was that we always hear about the CIA funding like overthrowing governments, this and that. So this is when they accidentally funded something, maybe for the wrong reasons, but they did fund a lot of abstract art. Because the idea was that they wanted America to be on the cultural cutting edge.
Okay.
They wanted people to look at America and be like, wow, they're putting out a bunch of really new, really unique stuff.
And like a diverse array of different like types and genres.
Yeah,
and
different
stuff like
types of
that.
paintings, different types of music. Jazz was pushed. Who was the famous jazz trumpeter?
There's a lot of them. Which
Yeah,
one?
there's several.
Louis Armstrong.
Oh,
He was
Louis
actually,
Armstrong.
Good old
yeah,
Louis.
we sort of made him a cultural ambassador.
I believe it.
Cool.
So, despite the American public in general not really liking the modern art of the time, the CIA would set up funds. And you know how millionaires and different funds will give to artists?
Okay.
Yeah.
The CIA would give those funds a bunch of money, so they'd be indirectly paying the artists. So the artists did not know they
Oh.
were getting CIA money.
That's interesting. So they were giving NGOs and like foundations
Yeah,
government money.
yeah,
So the foundations could channel it to people that were selected by the feds.
yeah.
Okay, that's terrifying. There are a lot of implications there.
There's an art cover up.
And that's interesting because when you hear CIA-funded art, usually you'd think it would be something super jingoistic. But a lot of the people, probably most of the people they were funding, were very left-wing, very anti-establishment. A lot of them were like, Jackson Pollock was like a raging alcoholic with a big mouth. They also funded
Wait, are
his...
you sure that you're not talking about any of the presidents from this time? Or yeah.
Truman? You know, Truman and his famous big alcohol-y mouth?
I don't know.
Nixon?
Nixon.
Or we're not too
Nixon came to
Guys,
mind when
it
I
is
said that.
1950.
I don't.
Nixon was always a lush.
I just assume that if you're the president, that you probably, like, at least in that time frame, you probably like boozed a lot
Oh yeah.
before the advent of like
Mad Men style.
a lot of TV like press corps stuff.
Time for the 7 martini lunch. I'm going to go home and slap my secretary.
Perfect. I just finished my 11 martini breakfast. It's perfect time for lunch.
I just had 17 gin and tonics, and now it's time to go abuse my kids.
Aha! Ideal America,
And that's how the nephews got the jobs.
the 1950s.
The soberest nephew.
What a
The
time!
soberest nephew got the job. So, are any of you familiar with the OSS?
No.
It was the predecessor to the CIA. It was a military.
Office of Secret Services?
Yeah. It was founded during World War II just to collect intelligence, and it officially wrapped up in 1945. But it was sort of rebranded in 1947 as the CIA. And the CIA was the first.
MASH episodes are coming back to my head. There's the one,
See,
the
you
one-
learned something.
There's the one jackass captain who's like always doing weird stuff.
Because the CIA was the first peacetime intelligence service. Before that, we didn't really like the idea. Yeah, we never had an intelligence
Damn.
service outside of like direct wartime. It was
Yeah,
like
that-
for a
And
set amount of
we
time.
really didn't have a lot of military might until like World War II was
Yeah,
kind of the
yeah.
advent of that, because I remember FDR said something like, in the next 10, like, we will produce like 10,000 planes or something like that, and everyone laughed, and we produced 100,000. It was just
Yes, and speaking of that, one of the first things done was the propaganda assets inventory.
Okay, that's a horrifying name for that.
It's very on the nose.
They were not subtle back then.
Not very good at naming things. They were like scientists. It's just scientists and people in the Fed are bad at naming things.
historians. I lay that on the
they're
historians.
Oh, really?
awful, yeah.
Historians are terrible at naming things.
What do we
Well,
call
there's
it?
the Great Northern
Hallstatt
War.
The
culture.
Great War.
The Northern War.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. The war in the North.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of scientists can name some things pretty well.
So at the height of its inventory, or at the
Big
height of
Bang.
its influence, the propaganda assets inventory influenced about 800 newspapers.
Oh my god. What were they just
Wait,
paying people
separate?
to publish stories?
What?
Separate, like different like newspapers.
Yes.
Like different titles.
Yes.
Yeah, because back then they weren't all
800.
owned by 3
Like
companies.
Washington Post, Washington Times,
So they had
Miami
influence.
Herald.
the
And
Daily Prophet.
once again, jail,
Daily Globe.
Daily Globe. Yeah, so
The Gotham Influencer.
once again, they didn't just, like, here's the thing with the CIA is I feel like a lot of times when people talk about or criticize the CIA, they just sort of create this really 2D straw man. And
like,
it
like
doesn't,
Men in Black, kind of like
Yeah,
just
it
manipulating
doesn't,
things
like-
from behind
Yeah,
the
like
scenes,
Puppet
sort of.
Master.
Yeah.
and
Dance for me.
But the thing is, they did find a lot of liberal newspapers, just, anti-Soviet, not terribly America critical. So they also placed agents in publishing houses, the film industry, and actually as travel writers even.
Okay, wait. So let's zoom out real quick. You're saying that this is like early or mid
40s and
1950s?
Early 1950s.
Okay, so this is even before the CIA was really a thing.
No, the CIA started in 1947.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's going by now.
I'm keeping track. Okay, so just keeping track of the
And
timeline.
believe me, they have been working hard in the
So,
last 5 years.
OSS turns into CIA. CIA then says, hey, we're going to
Propaganda
produce
assets inventory.
800 papers that, like,
Okay, but they didn't produce them. This isn't from scratch.
This
but
stuff is all already there. It's all
but like,
owned.
they're
just
funding
infiltrate
it and supporting it and making sure that it's still producing things.
Yeah.
yes.
And these papers are not like from the time when we put the word under God under that style of like jingoistic pro-America,
Some of them are.
anti-everything else.
But some of them
a
were the
lot
liberal
of them
papers.
were more like moderate to liberal.
Yes.
Is that what we're saying?
Even left and liberal.
Yes,
they were
they
funding
were-
the entire spectrum. That's what the government does.
Stuff that is so like very much not what the current American image of like what the 1950s were.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. The thing that they always do is they always fund the entire spectrum of civil society.
They're just doing all of it.
Yes, and because anything can be propaganda even if it doesn't want to be.
Yeah.
And it's most effective when it doesn't want to be. And even when they don't know that they're
It's,
producing
yeah, because the most
propaganda.
effective
It's the
propaganda is
society
the
of
stuff
the
that you
spectrum.
don't realize is propaganda.
Because here's the thing: the artists did not know that they were being funded. None
Exactly.
of them had any clue.
No one is
The
being
only
hired.
people who knew was the CIA and sort of people who were fronting for them. And I imagine that it would be the same for the newspapers, the films. Actually, the OSS was influencing the film industry to have sort of patriotic representations of the war. So this has been going on even before the CIA.
Which does explain all of those like John Wayne World
Yeah.
War II films.
Ooh.
They're actually,
Actually,
like,
yeah.
like they're good and they're well made.
and I don't want to talk too much
Government
about
funded.
that just
They're nuanced.
because
Yeah, they're-
just because that's like its own episode.
That's conspiratorial stuff too, because how much do we know about that?
Oh, actually, there's a whole book. I couldn't access it because you have to buy it. I couldn't find it through the libraries.
And we have no budget here.
yeah, we have no budget, so
Our sponsors,
get there later.
Various mobile games and government intelligence
Yeah.
agencies, have been very stingy of late.
Yeah.
So one of the most famous sort of fronts was Julius Fleischmann of the Fleischmann yeast fame.
What?
I love that. Fleischmann means meat man in German.
So it was Yeasty Meat Man
Yeast
funding. Yeah, so Yeasty Meat Man. The CIA gave Yeasty Meat Man a bunch of money, and he gave it to the artists, and the artists are like, "Thank you, Yeast Boy."
He's making our culture rise.
Yeah.
Our culture it's
Is
not,
our meaty culture right?
oh, it's not so
The
doughy
Arctic.
anymore. It's like
Yeah.
light and fluffy.
Yeah, the Arctic, the meaty.
So,
So this guy, the yeast
This
man
is
is fronting
everywhere.
money.
So the Yeast Man is fronting money along with some other charitable donors. So MoMA, at one point in the 50s, there were agents holding, seats as the chairman of the board of trustees, the secretary of the whole museum, and the founding father of the CIA, William Paley, was on the museum's international program board.
Oh my god.
He was also the president of CBS Broadcasting.
Holy
wait.
shit. Whoa.
wait. Hold on.
I didn't know about
Hold
that.
on.
Oh
The
my
Central
God.
Broadcasting Service.
Neither did I.
Or station or whatever the S
Canadian
stands
or
for.
whatever?
I think it's Central. Brad, can you look that up? I'm pretty sure it's Central Broadcasting.
And what I mean, I keep asking for this and you keep not doing it. Could you please get the picture of the chimp that doesn't have any hair?
He's right here.
Okay. Sorry.
Zing. But okay, wait. So
Columbia Broadcasting System.
okay, I was completely wrong except for the B.
Yeah,
But
I
we all
was
know what
totally wrong.
CBS is. So
Anyway.
CBS, CIA, MoMA.
Dear God. This is actually way darker than the
Hold
other
on.
stuff.
Yeah, wait. The MoMA stuff is funny. That's like, hey, we funded like some guy
'Cause it's
spent
all
3
these
hours
suits.
throwing paint
It's
at
all
a
these
canvas.
suits. It's like a bunch of suits and millionaires. Like this buttoned up yeast man who I think was like he was I think the governor of Cincinnati, or his father was.
Well, the mayor of Cincinnati?
Yes,
The governor of Cincinnati.
Cincinnati is its own
Yeah.
city-state.
cities do not have gubernatorial
The
races.
polis of,
Except for I
Shut
guess
up.
Massachusetts, because that's pretty much just Boston and then Western Massachusetts.
Rhode Island, man.
Yeah, Rhode Island. It's like Liechtenstein.
Rhode Island City. So the long leash of the CIA, tethered to the artists, held by Yeasty Man.
Oh,
Wait,
that's actually
who
a pretty
made-
decent metaphor.
This raises a
That's
question.
good.
Who made Leave It to Beaver? What
Where
channel?
was that?
You guys
You know
know
the-
about
you know the
Leave It to
TV
Beaver?
show?
The
Yeah, I know what Leave It to Beaver. What
Yeah.
does that have to do with MoMA?
Well, just well, I'm
Because Leave It to
thinking
Beaver is the most effective
it's
piece of
the
propaganda
most.
ever
It is.
created.
It is like it's like where the image of the ideal 1950s family comes from.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, oh, there's the wife and the husband and the son and the younger son, and that's Beaver.
But the
and
great
he
thing-
kind of careens his way through all these social problems that are then corrected by his family to this is how the American way is to do things.
The great thing about America, though, is the CIA didn't have to give them money. Maybe it wasn't funded by them at all.
Maybe let's find out.
People
Brad.
just
Leave It to Beaver was aired on ABC and CBS, and the production locations were Republic Studios, Universal Studios in Los Angeles.
Well, it was run on CBS, which was the president of was
ultimately
the
run
founding
by
father of
the
CIA.
CIA. So I don't know. New
That was
conspiracy.
where it was run, but it was funded by Republic Studios and Universal Studios.
Right, but who funded them?
Whoever
They're-
the owner of
You don't
Universal
have
Studios.
financial
Shareholders in
records from the
I
1950s.
don't.
Can you get the W-2s or whatever?
Yeah, can
it
you
is?
file some more like
K-10s.
FOIA stuff for us, just like right now?
But do you get the picture? Because I guess
So-
a lot of times when people criticize the CIA, they're just like, oh, they overthrow democratically,
elected
elected
governments,
governments,
yeah, yeah.
which they do. But also, it's kind of more complex than that. It's more confusing.
Well, and it's not CIA people doing the work. It's usually local surrogates. And in America, they just give money to millionaires
Yeah.
and say, you make your choices. You have freedom here.
But this is also like nascent CIA. This is also like in the thick of the Cold War when it was probably at its hottest.
No, I'd say it's hottest in the early '60s.
Yeah, but
about
like,
10
like
years
it's
before.
like it's like we've just like
It was
the
early Cold
Soviets.
War.
The Soviets have the bomb now because they got that in 1950, 1949, right?
Or this is around the time as the Rosenberg trials.
I have no idea what those are.
Julius and Ethel Rosenberg.
That doesn't help.
Oh. Well, now you know their first names.
Okay, so to school you on the Rosenbergs, they're actually the people who leaked the information on how to make the bomb to the Russians.
Ah,
Didn't we just stitch those guys up? Didn't they not do it?
They did it.
Did they? I thought we just kind of
Someone
picked
did
some
it.
fall guys and killed them.
well, someone did it. May as well be them,
The
right?
Rosenbergs did it. Okay, someone did it.
Yeah,
We
someone
don't know.
did it. Whatever. We have to electrocute somebody for this.
You can't accept that maybe.
Hey, Brad, when
Someone
did the Soviets
did
get the
something.
bomb?
There was a lot of theft of atomic secrets.
Yeah, that's
Why do you
true.
think the Soviets got the bomb so
Because I thought they
quickly?
got it in like
49 or 52
Yeah.
or something.
49. I think the
Yeah.
trials were going on like in 50.
Yeah.
The Soviets acquired the atomic bomb in 1949, August 29th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, but that's what I'm saying. Like we're in this part of the better dead than red part of like the Cold War.
So actually, this is interesting. This is all happening at the height of McCarthyism. So that's
old
the
McCarthy.
interesting thing about McCarthy is actually the Feds, the CIA was against him because he made Americans look like idiots. He
Yeah,
was
he was-
uncultured. He was very anti-culture, anti-innovation,
Yeah.
anti-modernist. So actually, the CIA were actually influenced by McCarthyism to counter McCarthyism, and they do that by having fronts to fund a bunch of Trotskyists to throw paint on canvases and then show it around Europe.
Yeah.
So, wait, so McCarthy was mostly done through the FBI, right?
I think he was. I think he was grassroots insanity.
He was just a lunatic who got up. He was just
Right. No.
blackout drunk
But
and-
McCarthy was using the FBI to
No.
do a lot of the
No.
investigations. I thought.
No,
No.
there were basically no investigations. It was a House hearing, so it was just the
Okay.
Congress.
He was kind of a proto-populist. So McCarthy, he's interesting because as far as I know, he's not a conspiracy. He's just a guy a lot of people agreed with.
He was just some asshole.
Yeah,
I'm
the
gonna start,
CIA
this is
had
going
a,
to lead me to reading up a lot about McCarthy.
and the CIA
Fascinating
had a
guy.
problem with him.
Well, I mean, come on, who
CIA
didn't?
didn't like him because he was an oaf. He was fucking
Yeah.
it up.
Yeah. So let's see. The New American Painting exhibit visited every major West European city in 1958 to 1959. So that would have been sort of the first time. Actually, there were a few in the mid 50s, but we'd start these traveling exhibits of American modern art in major European cities. And we especially focused on Paris, where, love it or hate it, the French talked about American paintings. The Boston Symphony Orchestra, for whatever reason, we picked Boston. To
There is no
represent
such
America.
thing as bad press, no?
For whatever reason, we picked Boston to represent America.
Oh my god.
Well,
Hey.
Why not, right? But no, but like
The art.
to be fair, Boston also did have like it has a pretty like hoity-toity elite scene there.
Yeah, it does.
It does like
And then they
there's
have-
old money there.
Yeah.
There's a reason why there's like 18 different hospitals. It's just it's for the people just talking
What?
like I'm oh yes, we're going to sail down the River Charles and examine some interesting paintings.
But the rest of the population is just racist cops. That's the entire rest of the
You
population.
can be old money racist cops.
Yeah.
I would never do policing. One walks far too much. Said a guy who talks like that who's American.
So remember how I
Yes,
said
they were.
the
They were from
agent.
Boston and New York.
So remember how I said the agent that had held the seat as the chairman of the board of trustees in MoMA was Tom Braden, who, as of 1995, I love this, lived in a mansion full of abstract art guarded by a small pack of German shepherds.
Literally Mr. Burns.
Yes. I don't know if he's still alive, probably not.
Hopefully
but
not.
yeah.
That would imply like a terrifying type of lifespan.
Just picture that. Because like
Citizen
these
Kane.
journalists went to visit
It
him.
sounds like the intro to some sort of action adventure.
I was thinking
movie.
a James Bond villain,
Like-
just him and his giant shepherd dogs.
Like that sounds that like Ocean's 12. Ocean's 12. That's what it is. There's the beginning of Ocean's 12 when there's some like reclusive art guy in Amsterdam that they need to steal a painting or something from. That's what that sounds like. That sounds like an 80s to 90s heist movie thing.
Yeah, it really does. So what did this guy do that was so interesting?
So let's see. He was an agent of the CIA, and he was on the chairman of the board of trustees of MoMA.
So the CIA was just deciding who MoMA was funding, what was going into the museum, the traveling exhibitions.
Right, because this was the modern art museum of the time.
Wow. Huh. Bang
And
for your
it's-
buck, huh?
How did
kind
this
of
all
funny.
come out though?
Interesting you should ask. So in the mid 90s, that's why most of the articles I found on this are from about 1995. A retired agent by the name of Donald Jameson kind of broke his silence. He was a former case officer. What?
Oh, another one. I was going to say Donald Jameson. How Irish can you be? Oh.
Yeah, he is named after whiskey. So regarding abstract expressionism, I'd love to be able to say that the CIA invented it just to see what happened in New York and downtown Soho tomorrow, he joked. So it was recognized that the abstract expressionism was a kind of art that made social realism look even more stylized and more rigid and confined than it was. And that relationship was exploited in some of the exhibitions.
So we're going to make the Soviets look bad by funding a bunch of just bizarre drug addicts
Yes.
to smack paint on canvas. Cool.
So like maybe our art isn't good, but at least we have a lot of it. Like
And
that's
There's so
like,
many different kinds. You can have that kind of shitty art and
I
that
mean,
kind of shitty art.
no one can really say definitively if any art is good or not. That's just kind of
Well,
the nature of it.
I can. Most people can.
Well, you can if it's good for you or not, but that's the problem
Oh,
with
it's
art.
objective.
No, it's
I
really
have.
not.
It's called objective taste. It's like perfect pitch, which I also have.
But that is an interesting approach to this whole propaganda machine. It's like, oh yeah, the Soviets have 3 great paintings. Well, we have
300
thousands.
not great
We have
paintings.
thousands of paintings, and we invented a whole new style of art.
We have the Walmart approach to art.
Now,
with
what
so
we're-
much choice.
now,
It's all crap.
We're not saying that abstract expressionism is invented by the CIA.
I am.
It probably would still have been influential without them.
I'm
They just
saying it.
pushed it to international fame
Hmm.
very quickly and aggressively.
So
No, I
it would have
think they
taken another
invented
10 years to
Yeah.
probably cycle through.
Maybe not. We don't know what would have happened.
Yeah, because we can't really say.
Because they picked who they wanted to be funded, and who is creating the great art also drives what the next generation does with art. So I don't know. I'm actually on the side of the CIA invented this kind of art. Maybe someone didn't sit in some room and be like, "I have a
Wait,
great
how
idea."
does that make sense? The CIA invented this art?
It's
They
not
pushed the
like
genre which became
exactly
influential.
funding and who becomes prominent pushes and shapes what art becomes prominent.
Okay.
And so they tilted the scales, and not through the normal process of public opinion did art get moved, but by their methods of, well, that looks weird, make more of that, and then send it to Europe.
But I don't think that's real. I don't think saying that they invented a genre.
Well, no one person invents a genre. You know,
We're not even a group of people.
Not
Yeah,
even
yeah,
an agency even.
things drive it, but I still think that like this, if it's, do we know how much money that was spent on this?
No, we don't have numbers. But I'd have to say, I think modern art would have taken over organically just because in art you're always looking for the next thing, and this was the next thing.
Right, but it was the next thing. But it was the next thing immediately at that moment, which was then suddenly accelerated and funded by the CIA.
And actually, there was a journalist, I think French in the 70s, who sort of, before any of this came out, wrote about, yeah, this style of art became really popular very suddenly, despite it not being very popular.
Oh, this is so creepy.
And
It's
that's
just, you look for what's something like this
Manufactured
today.
consent.
Manufactured consent.
yeah.
It's like, oh, this abstract expressionism is a new thing. Well, why is it a new thing? It's popular. Do people like it? Not really.
Yeah. Well, it's like how did we get some like 70% support for the Iraq War, like that?
Yeah.
Also, free media, so it's not like the government's just doing the North Korean thing,
Yeah.
of piping propaganda into your house.
But I don't know. That's the argument I'm making here is that like the CIA tipped the scales in such a way that they effectively changed how art developed, and
They distorted our
They
culture.
did a massive local spike of funding and growth, despite the fact that people didn't really like it. But and that's what I'm saying
But
is
it
that
wouldn't have gotten
art is
popular if people didn't like it. They didn't.
that's what I'm thinking is that art is still driven by public opinion, normally at least. And
I'm not completely sure because there's so much now weird stuff that I feel like people almost pay attention to because it's weird. Or have you ever seen like people sort of it's almost like hate reading something. Like people will be like, "Oh, this is shit. This is awful. This is
Yeah,
the worst thing," but
yeah.
they're still
Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah, but
they're
but,
still going to see
but
it.
it's a question of what influences something.
Yeah.
and I'm
I guess we
thinking,
can't really know.
And what I'm saying is that, or at least what I'm like thinking here is that there wasn't the normal process of where like
Well, that's what the whole episode's about.
unpolished things come up, and then they are like this unpolished new modern art stuff comes up. And instead of people being like, I don't like that as much, you're not getting your message across as well. You're not expressing what you're trying to express well. And then it gets pushed back down and like polished, and it comes up again better and better as the art as it evolves and changes.
It was less organic.
It wasn't like that slow crest and rise. It was
Yeah.
straight up, and then this became this cultural icon sort of thing.
But the thing is,
that
since we don't
changed the
know
fallout.
numbers, I don't know how extreme this was.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know if this was just a moderate amount of money and a few tours of Europe, or if it was like completely astroturfed. I can't know that. I don't
That's
think anyone can know
interesting.
that.
Yeah.
Because there have been some instances of the CIA, and like they'll take, I don't know, what's your example? Let's say Nicaragua. I think it was Nicaragua in the 50s, Operation PB Success. They set up these radio stations, they set up whole newspapers in Nicaragua, and they bombarded the country for 6 months or a year with just a ceaseless barrage of propaganda against whatever the government was. To the extent that they were able to generate enough discontent that a rebel movement could be formed. Then they took the rebel movement, funded it, and overthrew the government.
Yeah.
So it's possible to add completely astroturf.
It's complete. Yeah, but yeah, I'm just saying. I think just
just
for
don't
the
know.
sake of putting it out there that we can't really know how extensive this was. It seems way more extensive than anyone would guess.
Yeah, oh my god.
But that's the other thing is that based off the other conversations that we've had on this podcast about what the government has or hasn't done and the extent of what they've done it at, that leads me more inclined to believe that that this was a well-funded initiative.
Yeah, you think
and this
they'd
was pushed
drop-
pretty well.
they'd drop a lot of money
because
here.
they were on the board of they were the chairman of the board of trustees, and they were like in high up place. If it was just like a lower level op, this would probably have been. They wouldn't have had those positions of prominence. They would have just been like, yeah, no, give that like that guy. He's
That's
great.
true if
Give
they
him money.
bothered to actually get on the board of trustees of MoMA.
Exactly.
And have
Yeah,
like
exactly.
4 different
That
things
makes
in it.
me think that this was a much larger
That's fair.
op.
And then it's got to be part of a broader context of trying to influence culture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like I mentioned with the jazz, modern compositions, even plays, books, travel guides,
Cats as an op.
Cats is an op.
It has to be. It's awful.
Fucking
No
hate
one would
Andrew
like
Lloyd
that
Webber.
crap.
Oh my god.
Now this is really, I'm kind of wondering because the government, like just the federal government does give funds out. Like there's the endowment for the arts. So it's kind of interesting because you're wondering why was this, I guess we know why it's so secret, but it's kind of weird because it's something the government regularly does, but just very secretive and weird.
Well, Americans have this bizarre idea that our society doesn't produce propaganda. We think that we're unique. We're the only country in the world, the only society in history that doesn't produce any kind of propaganda. And so it has to happen
But
behind
do you
the
see what
scenes.
I'm saying though?
Yeah.
Like
Little
it's
bit.
very we know that the government funds arts, we know that they funds culture, but in this case it was under the table, and it's just kind of interesting to look at the reasons why.
But what's also
It's for a
funny,
different purpose.
I wonder how many of these like art pieces that were funded were at some point used as an argument against the NEA or the WPA. Like someone was like, can you believe? Look at this frivolous spending. This guy who did this one thing where he burned like he burned all his belongings outside of
Well,
something.
people wouldn't know that this was funded. That's the point.
No, but that's
With
the joke. Is that
WPA,
people thought that it was like,
Yeah, these-
oh,
these cuck
the-
big-city
like
liberals
taxpayers are paying for this, and like it's clearly the people running the WPA or the NEA that are doing this, not the CIA saying like, give that guy money. Like that guy, that one, the guy who just destroyed all of his personal belongings. Do it again. Yes, I love it.
So yeah, Pollock, I keep bringing him up. He and I think de Kooning, they were funded.
I have no idea.
I still can't believe you don't know Pollock.
I'm grossly uncultured. Let's be honest here.
So here's another interesting half of this whole thing. The CIA, this is not their last interaction with the art world. They have the Intelligence Art Collection, which if you go on their website, you know how office buildings have art just hanging on the walls, decorations?
Yeah, like hotel
Yes.
art. Like no
Yeah.
one gets offended by it.
This is going to get funny in a minute for you. Keep that in mind. So the Intelligence Art Collection is commemoration of the historical and inspiration for the future. That's what it says on the CIA website. It's commissioned art, commissioned by the CIA, celebrating events and milestones. So they say it's commissioned on the website, but then they also say these pieces are donated. I don't understand how that works. So there was one that is...
It could be that they commission it and then they're given the art. Like I don't know.
Could be a mix of both.
Yeah, they donate. Then the artist donates it instead of sells it or something.
Okay, so an example would be the painting Cast of a Few, Courage of a Nation, which is just a realistic painting of the invasion of Iraq.
What was the name again?
Cast of a Few, Courage of a Nation.
What the fuck?
Now there's also, we'll have
Is
to...
this just a painting of people just bombing the shit out of Iraqis?
It's people,
Bayoneting
it's
children
people,
or something?
Because that's what that was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that was what most of the invasion was.
We killed 500,000 people by destroying every government vehicle and water treatment facility in the country.
We just flew aircraft and just dropped explosives. That's what it was,
Most of
right?
the casualties were children
And
who
then
died of malnutrition.
tanks just rolled in and
Oh
was
my
like, "This is
fucking
ours
God.
now."
it's and then there's also, that's not even, we'll have to post this for our wonderful listeners, but there's a painting called Untouchable, which just looks like, it looks like concept art for SpaceX. That's the only way I can put it. It's called Untouchable, and it's just a space shuttle over the planet.
It's just
Wait, is it that on the?
It's just a thing flying.
oh, that's the Blackbird.
Yeah, that's the
SR-71.
Yeah.
I love
The
that
S-
You could tell that from here.
Yeah,
Yes,
I love
yeah.
that.
We,
I can't even see
we're,
that
we're
far in
huge,
glasses.
I'm
Are you a
That's
crow?
Am I a pro? Yeah.
Crow.
Oh, crow.
No, he's a
With your
raven.
vision.
They're different.
I'm a raven.
No, they're the
apparently.
same thing. It's just a genus.
Different
difference.
genus. That's not true. I made a
So
mistake.
fun-
I'm wearing different genus this episode than
Nice.
last time.
That's good.
So now, funny thing is, some of these
71 is
paintings are,
untouchable.
one of the art donors is Daniel K. Hilton, which I could not find for sure if this
Wait.
is the same Daniel Kevin Hilton of Hilton Hotel fame, but I'm pretty sure it is.
I
Because
would
how
be-
many
yeah.
Daniel K. Hiltons are there that collect art?
Brad?
There's one.
At least one.
Brad
All right.
can't save us here. So
wait,
yes.
wait, but hold on. Going back to the SR-71 pic, Untouchable. Is that a picture or is that
No,
a
it's
painting?
just a very realistic painting.
That looks like socialist realism.
It
looks
is. It is. It's
boring
just
and shiny.
socialist realism for America.
I mean,
So
that's
we went
just,
from experimental to very much not experimental.
I
Well,
almost
what,
wish
the,
that
what
that was
these
a
stuffed
painting.
shirts actually like is the socialist realism.
Yeah.
They wish that America wasn't like the Soviet Union. That's
Yeah, honestly, that style of propaganda is kind of what you want when you're fighting propaganda versus propaganda.
But this is interesting because the stuff that they showed to the world indirectly is all this very modern art, and then the stuff they have hanging on their walls.
yeah. Well, they're like us. They're swine. They don't like good art. I hate good art.
But it gets weirder
I don't think I know what that
because
is.
they actually have they have a private art collection. I'm not sure if it's in a gallery form. It's closed to the public. It's very hard to know
locked up
anything.
in boxes like the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes.
Oh, I'm going to buy the art today. Better bring your crowbar.
So this is the Intelligence Art Collection. Now we're transitioning to a totally different collection that is, we're back to modern art.
Oh,
Are you familiar with the Washington Color School?
No.
Neither was I.
absolutely not.
If any of you have seen Mad Men, think of anything they'd have on their walls there. Just color block art.
Huh.
Very geometric, very
Okay.
bright. So that was...
I like the shapes.
Yes, the shapes.
Pretty colors.
Pretty colors. Pretty...
At Mummy's Museum, we have
Mummy's
color blocks.
Museum. Yeah, it's just what little Nelson...
After we
displays
go and
his blocks,
after we
his
go and have our
pictures.
Shree Martini breakfast, we go by Mummy's Museum.
I like to get a Frosty instead of martinis because the alcohol makes my tummy hurt.
One day I'm going to be the vice
I
president.
think a lot of this is explained by kids. Like they put like gin in their baby bottles.
Oh yeah.
It's like
well,
1930.
that was a thing in like the late
Every- yeah.
1800s or
Yeah.
whatever.
They
It's
were
like,
all-
oh, heroin. You're feeling sick? Try some heroin. It's perfect, and
our
it
mom
cleans your
talked
Okay,
about
now
this.
shut the hell up. The Melzack Art Collection. Now, Melzack is an art collector,
We have to be reined in.
/ catfish farmer / possible felon. He actually got a medal from the CIA. They loved him.
Can I get that one more time, please?
Acoustic catfish.
Art collector, catfish farmer, businessman, possible felon.
So where did he start?
Who was this
Which
guy?
one
What
was first?
What was his name?
Vincent Melzack, which I feel like just makes you sound like you're in a
New
gang in
hero.
1920s New York.
This is.
Vince Melzack. Hey, Vinny Melzack.
Hey, Vinny, bring a catfish over. I'm hungry.
Oh,
He had a
there's-
catfish farm
there's
in
so
West
many-
Virginia.
This is so good.
Why
There's
would
so
you?
many people like this in the American
So we have
history.
Yeasty Man and we have the catfish farmer. Yeasty Meat Man.
Who can grow a catfish?
I can grow
Raise
a catfish.
it from an egg. The catfish man can.
So where were we? Yes, the Melzack art collection. When he died, it ended up with the CIA because I don't know exactly what he did, but they loved him. He gave them art. He got a medal. When he died, they got more art. So
Probably
it's
not good
actually
stuff.
just geometric art from the 50s and 60s from the Washington Art School. And here's the funny thing about it is there's only descriptions of it on the CIA website. There are
There's
no photos of it.
images.
It's not open to the public. Only one singular journalist. One journalist has been allowed to see the collection while supervised.
What? Why?
Oh,
Does that stuff have
So-
like fucking psychic powers?
And
Is it
she-
like
and
the
she
mutants from
mentioned-
SCP?
she
it's
mentioned
the
that-
actual MK Ultra.
And she
It
mentioned-
actually works.
What is it? Mimetotoxins or something?
Like you see the shape and it makes you go crazy.
Yeah, it's like you see it and it makes your brain
Isn't that a
melt.
little-
I think that is just art. Like good art is just supposed to be that. You see it and you're like, I don't know why, but I'm having a strong emotional
It
reaction.
does sound something like something from Lovecraft.
Yeah, these are
Like
the
you see it and
paintings
you go
that
crazy?
we
Well,
put
yeah.
some of them up in Abu Ghraib and had to take them down.
But here's the thing: is she was mentioned that all the previous journalists have reached out to the CIA, either got no answer or just like a flat-out refusal. They are very guarded about the Melzack collection.
So we should try and like see if we can go see
But here's
it.
the funny thing: is there's this artist in San Francisco who recreated the paintings based off of descriptions online and then showed them at a gallery in San Francisco. So thanks.
Do you think that they paid him too? Do you think that one set of nephews was not talking to the other and they
Oh my
accidentally funded the publication of their art?
So here's the question that comes from all of this. The implication is that the government has done this before, which means that they probably have no qualms doing it again.
Oh, they're probably doing it right now.
So
Like, what do you think this is, you idiots?
Did they? Jack.
Crack Ops is,
Did they?
Crack
So
Ops is NSA, not CIA. Please don't
Yeah,
sue us.
come
We're not
on.
actually NSA.
but so the questions then are: did this stop at some point, and if so, when? And if not, is it like what have they sponsored since then? Like what do we think?
We don't know.
You know what? I
Because
have
the
a guess
sources
though.
the sources we have don't really say when they end. They just talk a lot about the 50s.
Well, I tell you what, the Church Commission brought a lot of this stuff to light, and Congress was so mad at these people for doing shit like this. They were incredibly pissed off about MK Ultra and some of the other stuff that we're going to talk about. And they came down hard on the CIA and limited their ability to operate in the U.S. Now, if they're doing it, it basically has to be hidden from Congress.
Yeah. And
So
you know,
they probably can't do this stuff so much anymore.
Okay.
the CIA, we all know they can paint a room, but they also painted our hearts.
Aww.
And a lot of Jackson Pollocks. But okay, but then that doesn't answer the rest of the question though. If they've still been doing this, what do you think they've been sponsoring? Because I've got a strong idea there.
I think there's no justifiable way new metal got as popular as it did.
No, what are you talking about? Metal's great.
New metal.
Oh, new metal?
You think Slipknot was not?
New metal.
Slipknot.
Or
Still,
Limp Bizkit, they had to be.
Slipknot,
funded by
100% a
somebody.
ska band. They have like what, 17 members?
2 drummers.
But no, but here's what I think.
Yeah, which one's better though?
Are
The
you
zipper
guys
guy or the
familiar
pin
with
guy?
like the idea of like the classic 80s movie? Like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
80s
like-
movies are basically their own genre, you know, like Better Off Dead, Back to
one
the
where,
Future, Animal House, all these
Stallone is like a cop.
yeah, like all these, but this idea of like, oh, idyllic 80s America, which was very similar
But-
to 50s.
But
had
hold
all
that
these
thought.
crazy
Hold that
moments.
thought. But we're talking about them funding a bunch of weird avant-garde art, which makes me think maybe they did do that, but maybe they also funded edgy 90s movies.
I would be willing to bet that they funded a bunch of indie stuff. And then I'd be willing to bet that they stopped at the Cold War because the whole point was to make America look like a very ideologically diverse place, which it's not, and to make it look better than the Soviet Union. So why would they still be doing it? If anything, they would be funding those weird alt media and like anti-war newspapers that I read to try and have like a controlled opposition on the left.
See, but here's what
It
I'm
wouldn't
thinking.
be culture anymore.
But JD, what we're getting from this is that they didn't necessarily just fund jingoistic, idealized America.
Right, no,
that's
but
the whole point.
I'm aware of that, but I'm thinking that like if as this goes on, they have to reduce their funding on it, especially as we get to the 80s and the Cold War is kind of coming to an end.
Well, Congress has stopped them from doing it at this point.
So what are they funding with it if there was? And I'm thinking it's the 80s movie that basically just told you, because the overarching theme of the 80s movie is that like, don't worry, it'll all be all right.
Yeah. But
Everything will play out and you'll be fine. Do your crazy weird shit. No one cares.
But the way that our media works, no one has to fund that. Corporations just do it
True.
for profit.
You make- no,
they
you
make
make a
their
good
own
point.
propaganda. It's
But
not
I do
necessarily
like
'Cause,
the,
I
I do
mean,
like the
the
mental
point-
conspiracy of living the idea that like Back to the Future was funded by the CIA partially. Like that's why it was the Libyans. Like it wasn't just some
yeah,
generic.
yeah,
it's like
actually.
who's coming? The Libyans.
Oh my
'Cause I almost
god!
They have plutonium.
Because if you look
Gaddafi's
at
entire
what
army of 8 guys is in America.
And they're in a van and they're chasing down Christopher Lloyd.
That's the one fucking van the Libyan army
Yeah.
owns. Yeah.
Or like all this like wackadoo shit like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like, don't worry, teenagers. Don't pay attention to what's happening. Go out, steal cars, crash parades, live in New York City. It's fine.
But if
There's
you look
nothing going
at
wrong.
what is being funded, it's stuff that, because I feel like 80s movies was just kind of a response to popular demand. This stuff's interesting because it's counter mainstream. It's stuff like, for example, the World War II movie, like the heroic John Wayne World War II movies wouldn't be a thing. So it's like they created the new genres and then they pushed stuff that was sort of counterculture. So I can kind of see 80s movies just being a response to the general public.
Right,
Yeah,
but
people just
they
wanted
were
that.
countering the culture that was coming out of Russia, and Russia's culture at that point was like the 3 clearly state sponsored paintings, right?
Actually, in the you mean in the 50s?
In the 50s.
Oh, yes.
And in the 80s, what was like Russia was starting to have more and more culture and producing more and more different stuff.
Crazy movies.
Exactly.
You gotta watch like Roadside
So-
Picnic
And so
Waterloo.
the CIA response is to produce the more American
movies.
favored.
to go the opposite
Exactly.
way.
Oh, that's
more
fine.
Exactly. You see what I mean? It's the same thing.
And
just-
how the fuck
they
do you
just
explain the
flip
difference
polarity.
between Rambo 1 and Rambo 2 in terms of tone? One is a traumatized Vietnam
Yeah.
War veteran who's fighting the man and he does like terrorism. And the next one is this jingoistic weird fake POW fuckfest because there were never any POWs left in North Vietnam. That was a myth that Reagan just invented. And the movie's just about that.
I mean, think about
And
Rocky
then with
IV.
Rocky too, Rocky 1 is about this like mob enforcer
Yeah.
living in a broken, deindustrializing America,
Yeah.
finding love with someone else who's also weird like him.
Yeah.
And the second one, again, well, not so much the
Well,
second
yeah,
one,
but
like
the
the
thing
fourth
is,
one.
the first 3 actually told like an interesting story. It's
kind of
the
dark.
4th one is where we got to the 100%. I believe that was state sponsored.
I haven't seen any of the Rocky movies.
Okay,
Oh,
Rocky
Rocky IV is great. We
Spoiler
gotta watch
alert:
that.
the basic premise of Rocky IV is that Rocky trains so hard that he beats the
Wait, so he's the
steroid.
Stakhanovite.
The Italian
Yeah,
stallion.
he
actually is kind of a
the Italian
Stakhanovite.
stallion starts off by like fighting. I think this is when he fights Hulk Hogan as Thunderlips, and then it ends. It ends with him. It ends with him.
Thunderlips?
Just like he goes to Russia and
is
trains
like
in
the
a
volleyball
farmhouse,
scene.
and by running up snowy mountains to go and beat the coked up. Like steroid pumped,
Ubermensch,
like Ubermensch machine made Dolph Lundgren man of metal from Russia,
Yeah.
and then he beats him so hard in a boxing match that he gets like the state members of Soviet Russia to suddenly start cheering for him, and like they're all suddenly pro-America. Like the whole premise is basically Rocky goes, trains in a farmhouse, kicks some guy's ass so hard that
Cold
he
War's
ends the
over.
Cold War.
Well, Gorbachev was there and he said, "My God, we have to have dominoes
Yeah.
in our country now."
It's like oh my God. Look at that man. Look at that nose. I want to be like that. We're America now.
Well,
like
hey,
that's
hey,
what the
Russia's
movie
nose game's
is.
better than our nose game.
I have no
we're gonna
information
get
to base
back
off
into
of that.
the fight we have. The Russians are perfectly rectangular. They are wider than they are tall. This is true
Unless they're
across
Dolph
the board.
Lundgren.
Look at
they
that
have,
movie.
Then they
He's
have
a wide
curvies
boy.
and bumps. He's a white boy, but and you know
Wide boy. In the 80s, everyone was shaped like a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, they were like the
Everyone was just sort of Their
But-
dimensions were off.
But basically, my takeaway from this conversation that we've had is that Rocky IV was obviously state-sponsored propaganda.
Yeah, of course. This is the only logical conclusion.
Like that's the.
We should have a whole episode where we're just saying our guesses for what's going to come out in 50 years.
I would believe that.
Oh my god.
That
We
would be
should-
fun.
Ooh.
And then Rocky IV created so much interest in it that he made Rocky V, where he.
How many Rocky?
There are if you include the Creed movies, there are
Which you should.
8. You should. I haven't actually
'Cause it's
seen
the
them, but I
Rocky
hear that they're
Cinematic
very
Universe.
very good.
Good even number.
Cinematic.
Yeah, the RCU.
So my finishing thoughts on this is there is no counterculture and opposition is manufactured.
Yeah, my finishing thought. We live in a terrifying hall of mirrors. It's impossible to know what is and isn't true. But we're here to guide you through. What we're
But-
telling you is true. We are independent.
We are independent.
We
But
are the
this
only
did
ones you
end
can
up
trust.
being weirdly wholesome because at the end the CIA just funded a bunch of art.
Yeah.
They just gave artists money.
But that does give me an interesting final thought, at least interesting to me. If maybe the reason why a lot of the counterculture that we see these days is so terrible is because they're using this as the basis from it. This was the first major counterculture movement of modern
Sabotaged
America.
at the very bottom
And
level.
so they're just
We
like
started
it
at the
has to
bottom.
be it has to be aggressive and bad.
So we started at the bottom and then we drilled lower.
And that has been the inspiration for every subsequent counterculture movement.
Started from the top. Now we hear.
Except for maybe the one in the 60s, which was the counterculture movement to the CIA-sponsored counterculture movement of the 50s.
We're gonna get into that.
Are we too big brain at this point?
I
We're
think
too big brain.
our
Do we
brains have
do we
expanded
need to
too far.
deflate?
Let's,
We need to like go
let's
back from galaxy.
dehydrocephalize
I think we're
ourselves.
good.
Bring it back
Wait.
in, guys.
Are we episode done?
I have to
Well,
take a
hold
crap,
on,
so
hold
I
on.
think We're done.
Brad,
Brad,
Do you
do you
have
have
any
any
final
final thoughts?
No, I'm good.
You are good.
Right on.
There are things we know, but there are also the ones we don't know,
I welcome this kind of examination.
The power of the presidency doesn't rest here.
Covert operation. Grave danger to the civilized world.
You deserve the truth.